Hey gorgeous, welcome to Happy Go Fabulous. I am so thrilled that you're here. This is our space where we get real about life, the good, the messy and all the juicy bits in between. Real talk, real life and a whole lot of delicious living. But I must warn you, listening may cause unexpected outbreaks of fabulousness and real life magic. Hi, I'm Catherine and I am so incredibly passionate about helping inspired, motivated, impact-driven, freedom-seeking people just like you to do the deep inner work to create those beautiful outer wonders in life. It's all about revolutionising your relationship with yourself, where you fall madly, deeply in love with who you are and create a life so fabulous you can't wait to jump out of bed every morning to live it. Ready? Because ordinary living is so last season. Life's waiting and it's time to make it fabulous. Let's shimmy on in. Hi gorgeous, how are you? It's getting a bit cold here in Australia. It's moving, we're still autumn, but we just had a cold snap this week. So I'm feeling, I'm a summer girl, but I'm embracing the cooler weather. It means that I can legitimately put my fire on. So that's cool in itself. So anyway, how are you? I've been asked all the time, maybe not all the time, but a lot of the times, especially since I've moved to the coast and I've been posting more about guidance that I've been receiving, people are curious to know how I receive the guidance and what it actually feels like and whether it's real and, you know, how to access their own intuition and their own inner wisdom and guidance. And I really had to sit with this one because I think intuition is on all the time for me, but how do I break it down into how do I access it? So what I'm going to do is I'll share a little bit about my personal journey, my story, just some personal experiences. I'll share some tips with you as well, and also a beautiful resource I created if you want to go deeper. And that's really when we're talking about intuition and guidance, that just landed with me saying, well, I'm getting asked this a lot. So maybe if I put my thoughts into a guide that would be useful for people. So that'll be in the show notes for you. Do you know, when I was growing up, and I think I've shared a little bit of this with you before, I, as a kid, a young kid, I reckon I would have been maybe 7 or 8 or something, but watching TV growing up. And there was a whole lot of TV, but there was a couple of shows that really I felt uncomfortable with. One of them was Lassie. You know, Lassie the Wonder Dog, or I'm not sure if that was the name, but Lassie the dog. I used to feel really, really uncomfortable watching that, and I couldn't watch a full episode. It was just like, oh, I've got to go do something else. Skippy, the bush kangaroo. So those of you that are Aussies will know Skippy, especially if you're my vintage and growing up in the 70s. For those of you that aren't from Australia, Skippy is a bush kangaroo, but Skip used to get into all these situations, and Sonny and Jerry and all the people on Skippy would go and rescue them, but get into these really precarious situations, and I would feel what Skip was feeling. And the same with Black Beauty and Flicker, and it seemed to be animal shows that I would just pick up what those animals were actually feeling. And I didn't have language for it then, but reflecting back on it, I think that's my first experience with, you know, being an empath and that sixth sense that I was feeling there. It's also that energy sensitivity that was showing up early, but I certainly didn't have language. I would not have described it. My parents would not have described that. But looking back on just life, it's kind of like, yeah, that was probably the first experiences that I recall. And I had a very vivid imagination as a kid growing up, like lots and lots of make-believe games, you know, lots of make-believes and adventure and creating, lots of creating stuff. So, you know, that's sort of the imagination, the But then when my mum passed away, so if you've been following my journey, you know, mum passed away just before I was 12, the day before my 12th birthday. And that changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. But that's where things started to kind of happen for me in accessing information from beyond. Let's just say that. So, you know, mum passed away and I would dearly, dearly love her to still be on this earth plane. But my connection with her changed. She didn't really disappear for me. She just began showing up in different ways. I could sense her presence around me. She would come to me in dreams. A lot of the immediate years after she passed away, I probably don't have much recollection of, in all honesty. That was just a blur. That was a numb blurriness. But I think when I was starting to come out of that, there would be a sense of her around, just this sense, just this knowing that mum was kind of around, even though she wasn't around. And that was very confusing for a teenager to go, we couldn't talk about mum and passing away and the grieving part. There is no way on God's earth I'm going to share that I can sense her being around me. That would have just been too weird. So I kept that all to myself. But there was kind of just this knowingness. And I recall I've always been interested in my sort of later teenage, early adult and beyond years in, spirituality, spiritual awareness and development and energy and whenever for my healing and even for my health, I would go, my first option would be go to energy workers and energy healers. And, we were quite a religious family growing up, but mainstream religion didn't kind of connect with me, but spirituality, which is there is a greater being, there is a sense of, the spirit and universe but not in the religious mainstream context, if that makes sense. So I was always intrigued with psychic development and psychic awareness as well. So I would see lots of different psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, just to get insight. And it wasn't to go and connect with mum by any means. That's not why I did it. It was just this curiosity and, just wanting to know more about me and life and stuff. And there was one time, I remember experiencing this really sharp stabbing pain in my back, and it was just kind of coming and going. And I had actually had pleurisy a couple of times in early adulthood. And it felt like pleurisy. It was this real sharp stabbing in the left, very distinctly in the left side of my back. And it would start with a dull ache, and then it would just get this piercing as though somebody was just digging something sharp under my shoulder blade. And I happened to be seeing a psychic at the time, and it just kind of went, oh. And she said, what's that? And I said, I'm just getting this stabbing pain. And she went, oh, that's your mum. I'm like, what do you mean that's my mum? And she said, that's your mum trying to get your attention. It's like, what do you mean? And then mum just kind of came and said about trying to get my attention for me to listen. And so the psychic said, does it come in like a dull, a light pain, and then it builds up to this stabbing pain? And I go, yeah, that's exactly what it is. I think it's pleurisy, but I don't want to go to the doctor again because that's just a whole pain and blah, blah, blah. And she said, that's your mum trying to get your attention. So what she's doing is tapping you, and then you're not paying attention. So she's like, Catherine, listen. And anyway, being with that psychic, it kind of opened up this portal for me to connect with mum even more differently than I had been. And it's interesting. I find this interesting that the episode I did a couple of weeks ago around the secret language of your body, and I'm talking about the energy centers of our body. And, the right side of our body shows up the masculine energy, and the left side is the feminine energy and the intuition. And it's really interesting that the sharp stabbing pain would only be on my left-hand side. So that was definitely my mum. And so she comes to me very, very differently, like not all the time. And I don't get that stabbing pain anymore. Or if I do, it's just like, oh, okay, I need to listen. So I've learned that that's a signal from my mum to either check in with her or to check in with myself, or there's something to pay attention to, which is very, very, very cool. And I don't connect with my mum like a lot of people do with their mum sitting around having a cup of tea and talking or on the phone or anything. But it feels sort of like that. Like I will have a conversation with her, but the conversation will be in my head it feels like it's coming from my third eye. So remember I talked about the chakras, the third eye. And it's, and I can see her as clearly. She's actually here with us now. I can see her as clearly as anything. I've been gifted with very visual, that clairvoyance and the clairsentience, which is about that sensing and feeling and knowing. And there are some bits where I can hear what she says, but it's not like I hear it as words in my ear, but it's words. It's almost like it's in my etheric body. So not within. It feels different to when I'm thinking about, planning this podcast, or thinking about where do I want to go on a holiday, or what do I need to get for shopping, that planning, thinking mind. It's different. It feels different. And it's a bit tricky for me to describe that because I've learned to tune into it over the years. It just feels softer, and there is a knowing that it's not my conscious mind doing it, if that makes sense. So I've learned to feel and to pay attention to her. And I also, I guess, over the years started to develop, like really tune in, not just to mum, but to other messages that I was receiving and other guidance and other just nudges. And I would start to notice white feathers were and still are, maybe not so much now, but white feathers were very, very significant in the earlier time of me developing my intuition, tapping into the guidance and even those psychic abilities. But this is more about we don't need to be psychics. We can still access our intuition because it's there all the time. But white feathers, and they would show up just as a sign that angels were around for me, that I was looked after, I was divinely supported. Those times where I would sort of second guess about, what the fuck am I even doing? I'd see a white feather and it's just like, you're doing okay. And then I would ask for signs. I would ask to see a white feather to show me that I'm on the right path. And I would, and I'd be looking for white feathers, show me, prove to me that I'm on the right path, that I'm doing okay. And I used to get a lot of frustration and resistance. And it's like, if I can't find a white feather, it means that I'm kind of doomed. That I was putting this meaning and this reliance on needing to see a white feather. And then I just went, no, that doesn't feel right. That does not feel right. And then it was kind of like the white feathers would show up. And what I've noticed, and this is what I've observed about myself, is when I'm thinking something, what is it that I'm thinking about when the white feather appears? And it's giving me kind of a thumbs up sign. The thing I'm thinking about is worth pursuing. So I don't have specific examples that are coming to mind, but it would be I would see a lot of white feathers in Canberra, and I'd be on a morning walk. And that's when I do my walking meditation and my morning ritual. And I'd be kind of thinking about something. And if there was a white feather there, it's just like, oh, what's the thing I was thinking about? Because it's just a sign of confirmation, if that makes sense. And I do recall I do recall one time I went to when my mum passed away. She grew up in Sydney. We were living in country New South Wales when she passed away, but she was cremated and is in the North Sydney crematorium next to her mum, and it's a beautiful spot, a resting spot. And I remember I visit there, periodically, not all the time, but I get so many powerful messages when I'm there. But there was one time, I'm going to cry now. There was one time, God, can I get through a podcast episode without crying? There was one time that I was there a couple of years ago, and it was on Mother's Day, and I just sit there for hours and just contemplate life and connect, and Mum's memorial is next to her mum's. And I went back to the car and there was 2 white feathers at the car. Like there when I got out of the car, there was 2 white feathers that just went, "You'll be okay." And that was Mum and her. Oh, Jesus. I did not think this would be a crying episode. But she, the 2 white feathers were just there at my car. Like, what the freak? And they were just laid out. And it was just a sign like, "You're okay." I think when I went to visit her that particular year, I was feeling really, really sad and not okay. God, that was years ago. But anyway, so white feathers were definitely a symbol for me. And I would tune into those, and I got to notice when they would appear. And I don't seem to see as many here because there's not as many white birds down here, down the coast, but there's still a feather will be, it's significant. It has significant meaning for me as well. And I just, over the years, I just started to notice these inner knowings. I just knew stuff. And it's like, how did I even know that without learning that? When I did, different variations of study, and especially around the energy work that I've done, the healing work, the spiritual psychology, and even some of my coaching practices that I've done, it's almost like I feel like I know this stuff, and it's just a remembering. Like, how would I even know that? So that's intuition. That's definitely intuition. And it wasn't coming from logic. It wasn't stuff that I was reading in books. It was just kind of this knowing and a sense of the truth. And I learned to not brush it off, and I learned to pay attention and to notice it. And I had some experiences, and there's so many different, God, I wouldn't even share all of them, but there's a couple of poignant ones that are sort of coming through for me now. And even sharing this episode, I believe it or not, I do plan my podcasts out, but what comes out of my mouth at the time is often not what I planned to say. But I get messages from so many people that go, "Oh, that thing you said on your podcast, that's exactly what I needed to hear. And it's really made such a huge difference, like such a huge difference." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Just trusting that what comes out needs to come out. So this, this is one of them. And the examples that are coming through are the ones that just need to come out at the moment. But I remember standing in the kitchen at home, and I was cooking, and there was it was my great-grandmother who I had never met. I had not even seen any photos of. I had heard her name vaguely. We didn't really talk much about her. I'm not sure why. But she came to me in the kitchen. It's like she was just there, standing next to me, but just behind me. And she said, "Hi, she mentioned her name, and she said, "I've just got some stuff that you might be interested in just life." And it was just this download. I was there cooking, going like, what the fuck? This was in my early sort of, I don't know if I'd really connected with anybody other than Mum from beyond. And she says, "I've just got some stuff you might be interested in about life." And it was just such profound guidance, like I was there listening to this wealth of wisdom. And then she just said, bye. And I was like, oh my God, like, do I tell anybody this or not? I don't think I told anybody that. It's like go out to John and going, oh, my great grandmother just came to me and just told me all this advice about life. And so I must have needed to hear that, but it was very, very cool. And there was another time when I was putting some website copy together for the Happiness Hive in the very early days. And this is before AI or anything. And when I speak, it tends to flow pretty freely, even though sometimes it's a little bit garbled and it's a little bit random, but it tends to be pretty free flowing. Whereas when I need to write, and especially content for business, my brain works differently and it gets a bit clunky. And there was something that I was doing and it was just hard. It was hard. You know, when it's like, oh, far out, like this is just freaking hard. And I remember almost like doing that, wanting to throw stuff and just, damn, this is hard. And then I could smell cigarette smoke. And now I used to be a smoker years and years and years and years ago, and I'm an anti-smoker. If I smell cigarette smoke now, it's like, yuck, 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 yuck. But I could smell cigarette smoke. I'm going, where? Who's that? This was from my home office going, where's that smoke coming from? And then when I sort of came back, I had a look around the house to check that nothing was on fire. And I came back and sat at my chair, and it's like this person was sitting next to me, and it was my grandfather, who I had never met. He died before I was born. He sat there and he said, looks like you're having some trouble. I'd like to help you. And he just sat and he said, maybe this is the way that you could say it. And it just channeled, his words channeled through me like, oh my God, like what? What? It was like he was sitting there with me and the words, and I was just like, typing. And it flowed and it was easy. And it was just like, and I've tried to access him again and he hasn't come back. And it's like, I need you. Maybe he's one of my AI bots. Maybe I can call one of my AI bots Ken. But it was just, and there's some things that have sort of come through and I was just like, man, am I making this up? Do I share that with anybody? It feels a little bit like it's real, but it feels like it's just a bit spooky and a bit made up. And if I say that to people, they're going to think I'm a real kooker. I'm not sure what kooker is. Kookster? Anyway. So I started to explore more of these abilities and how to access my guides and how to tune into my intuition and my inner guidance and my abilities and gifts. And, I've always been curious about this, like I said, the psychic development, the energy work and the spiritual practices. And so I started to do some psychic development classes and intuitive development. They were called psychic development and intuitive development classes. And I sort of would do little ones, but I do it like, oh, I'm going to go do this. But I didn't really talk to people about it. It was for my own practice and use. And I went and I learned some really cool tools to help me to go deeper and how to access my guidance. But it felt like I already knew this stuff. It was just like, yep. And I do that a lot. When people say things to me, I've noticed I go, yep. It's like I know. Like you don't need to go into details. I know. Even when I'm with coaching clients, they will share stuff and I go, yep, I know. And there was somebody even yesterday on the phone who was going into this really complex, it was a really complex kind of situation that's happening. I go, yep. And they said, but what do you mean? Yeah, I go, I have to make sure I don't sound like I'm being dismissive because I'm not. That's just me going, yeah, I get it. I understand. But of course, go into the details for me as well. So I went and did these, a whole variety of classes, but really it was in reality, what it was seeking confirmation that I wasn't freaking weird, that I wasn't making this stuff up and that I wasn't going mad. And there was some really, really, really powerful confirmation. And some of the classes were where we just did personal practice. And then some of the classes were where we did stuff and we practiced on each other. And it was just like, oh, like energy work that was just using energy was so freaking amazing. And accessing, almost being, do you know what it's almost like? It's almost like a telepathy, that I would know what people were thinking without them saying what they were thinking. And when I'd share that back, they're just going, oh my God, how did you even know that? It's like, I don't know. It's just the thing. So I guess it's about that tuning in. If there's something I want to say at this point, it's about really recognizing, noticing and tuning in, observing. And this is like, oh, what is that? Where did that come from? Where does that inner voice sit? Where does the inner voice sit? Mine sits around this etheric body. I can feel when it's different for me. And one of the tools that really, really helped me, and this wasn't something that anybody taught me, it was just drawn to it, and it's the journaling. And I'll say journaling, the writing, the scribing is the power for me. There is a conduit when I hold the pen. So if I type, it's like, yeah, I get some stuff there. If I voice record, that's also, it's relatively powerful. But when I write, that is like the pen is the conduit. And I use an electronic notebook at the moment for most things. It's one of the best tools that I've got, but it still has a electronic pen, a pen that uses a scribing tool. When I've got this in my hand, it's just like, oh my God, it's like an antenna, a connection, a conduit to messages that come through. And what I do there's a whole range of different journaling that I do, but one way I do it is I will just write at the top of the page what I'm asking for. You know, can you give me some clarity around XYZ? Or what would be useful for me to know today? I'm feeling like bleh. What's that about? Or I'm feeling really scattered. Can you give me some insight into what that might be about? Now, I can just ask that question and I will also get connection around that. That happens instantaneously for me. But when I write it, there just seems to be a power in that. And when you see me posting on socials about being at the beach and writing, I'm going to my meditation nook and journaling, that connection is hugely, hugely, hugely powerful, profound, insightful, just amazing. So the journaling for me, and what I have observed over the years, this just happened very organically, but it might be something that you can reflect on, is I would write, when it's me, when it's Catherine, the human, you know, coming from my conscious mind, what is it that would be useful for me to know today? When I write that down, I write that from left to right, like we normally write in Western society. That, you know, I start from the left, and when I'm doing all my writing from me, it's from the left. And then when the insight, the guidance, the messages come in that are not from the conscious me, they tend to be indented in my notebook. And then I'll write and it stays indented. And then when I ask a question going, oh, what do you mean by that? I'll write from the left, and then the answer from my guides, my spiritual team, will come and they're indented. So I can look back through my journal pages and I can very clearly see what was me and what was guided or what was channeled or what was my intuition coming to me. And it feels very different for me. I've just tuned in that it feels very different. When it's me, I can feel it in my head. I can feel it in my brain. When it's coming from external, I can feel it in that etheric body. It's coming from externally to me. And even though the voice feels different. So it's not like the voice sounds different, the voice feels different. And they're just ways that I notice that there. So the writing is that really incredibly powerful conduit. And I quite often, most times, I don't go back and read what I've written because it locks in the writing of it. I'm also very kinesthetic as well. So the writing of it helps to lock it in. And sometimes I just go so incredibly fast that the writing is not English, it's just scribbles. But it's the action of the writing that is helping me to access the guidance that's coming to me. So that it's more than me just saying, oh, dear diary, I had a great day. Here's what I want to release and blah, blah, blah. That's a different type of journaling. This is channeling, accessing journaling. So that's hugely powerful for me. And do you know what's also happened since I've moved to the coast and I go to the beach, not every morning, but, a lot of mornings, my intuition, my guidance, it's like the portal has just magnified, it's amplified a gazillion times. Like the messages when I'm at the beach, it's just like, pa-chung, here she is. Here's all the stuff we need to let her know. Here's some guidance for today. Here's some insight. Here's some really cool things that we just want her to know. And it's just like, oh my God, it's just taken it to a completely supercharged level. And especially because I generally go to the beach just before sunrise and watch the sunrise. Far out. That's my spot. Clear messages come through. I just get so much insight there. And it's almost like the messages come from my guides. They come from me. They come from my intuition. They come from the ocean. They come from beyond. It's like I'm in this portal of receiving. Far out. It's just incredible. I've got a book in me, and I haven't made time for that yet. But when I do, most of that will be happening down at the beach because I know that will be channeled. And even when we move to the property, this property has a lot of energy about it, and there is specific ancestral guides that have made themselves known to me here. The animals, it's like that telepathy is happening with the animals, which is very, very cool. And even just tapping into my knowing about when we move to this property, we used our conscious minds about the criteria of what do we want at the property and blah, 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 and where do we want to live. And then when we started looking for places, I just knew, I'd got a sense of the area that we wanted to be in. I just knew. And John's going, how do you know? I'm just going, I just know. And we would look at some houses and we'd drive up to the driveway and I say to John, that's not it. And he said, how do you know? We haven't even gone in. It's just like, I just know. And he's like, just come in and have a look. And I'd go in and he'd come out and go, no, that's not it. And I'm going, I know. And when we got to this property, we both knew here. It was just like, yes, this is it. But even bigger than that, not just even the property, about the area that we're living in. It was just like, yes. It was just a knowing. It was just a knowing and a trusting of that. So, but the messages are not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes there's just this little twinge or this nudge, or like putting the episode for this podcast and the resource that I'm going to share with you that I've developed, that was just like, oh, that's just a little nudge. I didn't sit down and plan that as part of my suite of offerings, but it just kind of came in. There was working with a couple of clients recently and doing some Akashic record readings, which is that's channeling guides where I do that. And you can find out more about the Akashic records readings. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. that I was working with a couple of clients and they were just like, how do I access my intuition? I've got a sense, but I'm not really sure how to do that. And excuse me, then it just kind of came in and said, Catherine, you can share with people, but why don't we capture it into a resource, a practical guide that people can use? And my guides come through me. They know that I'm practical and they know that I can, for the most part, take information and make it simple for other people. So that's what the guide is, and I'll share that with you shortly. So the messages are not always dramatic or loud. Sometimes they can just be this little whisper, just a little sensation, or just even a flash, or even just you might get goosebumps, the confirmation. I get goosebumps a lot for confirmation. I know that that's very common for a lot of people, and that's almost like, yes, that's a sign going, yes, that's confirmation. It could just be this tingly sort of truth feeling. It just feels right. Or it could be that when you're journaling, you get this unexpected insight that doesn't feel like it's come from you, or a calm voice that feels different than your inner voice. And, for some people, they might see something. Like I said, I've got very clear seeing. Others might hear things clearly. They might sense them. They might just physically feel them as well. Like with those TV shows, I would physically feel what was going on for other people and the animals. And it's about, it's not necessarily knowing everything or everything being a clear sign, or it might be signs showing up. We see 111 or mine's 444. That seems to be a common thing for me. Or it might be lyrics of a song that come up. And so it's not about knowing everything. It's really about tuning in and recognizing what it is for you. Because just because I'm sharing what it is for me, that's not necessarily how it will show up for you. So a couple of ways that you can start noticing and tapping into your intuition and accessing your guides is just ask and notice. Just ask a question. Start with a small, just non-stressful questions, nothing too big. What would feel good today? Or what could be useful for me to know today? I don't ask, what do I need to know? Because that has a different energy. But what could be useful? What would be useful for me to know today? What would feel good today? And then notice what happens, and notice your first hit. Like, not the second guessing that comes after it, but just notice that first hit, because that is often the one that has the most meaning and power, but the one that we dismiss. So really notice that first hit and create space. Like, turn off your phone. Don't do this when you're rushing between picking the kids up and it's like, I've got 2 minutes. I mean, you can do it in 2 minutes. Absolutely. You can do it in a minute. You can do it in 10 seconds. But allow yourself space, especially if you're newer to this or you're wanting to practice this. Turn your phone off, go outside and just let yourself be quiet for a few minutes and just notice and tune into your body. Really tune in. And does it feel open and expansive, or does it feel tight and kind of constricted? Does it feel light, or does it feel heavy? Like, the guidance is there. And if you go back to the episodes that I was talking about, the meltdowns and the decluttering and that heaviness that I was feeling, that was about, this feels hard. There's more to it than just unpacking boxes. And then the feeling I've had since then is this lightness and freeing to go. Now that we've been through the hard part, it's time that we can open up and tune into other things. It's about stepping into new beginnings, and that feels really light and expansive for me. So really tune into your body, and where do you feel it in your body or around your body? And I get and I've tuned into this over the years too, but when we're talking about a full body yes, it's like, yes, that feels right. My mouth does this and I'm trying not to do it now, but I get this puckering up feeling. I call it my pucker yes. But I get this, it's like it's a screwy up sort of feeling in my mouth, but my eyes kind of squint but open, and I can feel this real lightness and brightness around my eyes. So that's a full body absolute yes for me. And then a no also shows up in my mouth, but it tends to be more of a, I'm biting my lip and I'm holding it in, and it has a very different, heavy, drawing down energy, whereas the yes is a light, expansive energy. So I've learnt that. I've been very tuned in, very tuned in to how it shows up for me. So tune into your body and also notice signs and symbols and synchronicities. Notice that, a feather's your thing, or is it number patterns that keep showing up, or is it lyrics or songs that you hear that loved ones used to, when you're thinking of a loved one, you hear a particular song, or is a particular song confirmation for you? What are the signs? Your guides really love to use what you'll notice. So it could be different for each of us. That would be very cool to hear. And speak to your guides like they're listening, because they are. And you don't have to do big rituals or, fancy calling them in. It can just be about, you might have a specific guide, or you might not be aware of who your guides are. You might be just like, oh, I don't know about that. I tend to just ask. I have a spiritual team, and there are I do have some specific guides. I have, my mum is definitely there, and there are some specific, interesting. I have a lot of animal guides that show up and I call on, and there are different ones for different reasons. But sometimes the messages will just come in, and I'm not sure who that's from. I just kind of go the spirit, from spirit, or it's a divinely guided message. I personally don't need to attribute it to anybody specifically, but sometimes they like to make themselves known. And I just say, is there anything I meant to hear? I'm open, and just asking that question, and speaking to your guides, and journaling is a huge way. So try that. Let me know how you go with journaling. So, and you could even just ask, how can I access my intuition and guides? That could be your question, and then just what comes forward. But really, write without filtering, and just trust what drops in. Sometimes when we're journaling, we want to make it all nice and neat, and it's just like, I'm filtering what they're saying. Don't filter. Don't filter. Because that's our humanness, our ego coming in, wanting to control things. Quite often our intuition will say, you know what, this relationship probably isn't the right relationship for you. But our human goes, oh, but I really love this person and I want to be with them. And really, they know deep down that maybe that's not the right relationship, but they're too maybe scared. They fear the unknown of, who are they without that relationship? So they stay there. But even though their gut says to them, you know what, maybe this isn't the one. Or on the flip side, maybe it's like, yep, this is time to put yourself out there and, trust that the right person will come along. But people might go, oh no, I've been burned in relationships before. I'm not going to go do that. So just trust. And there's no perfect way to do it, just your way. That's the point. There is no perfect way. So this is some of my experiences. These are some tools that might help you to access, but it's about how do you do it. Please don't ever put your faith you could put in, but don't hand over your power to somebody else and say, oh, I can only do it this certain way, or I have to have a crystal and I have to do some special chanting and I have to do all these things. You don't. You do it your way. There is some ways that can assist and help, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's about how you do it. It's absolutely about how you do it. And I do recall somebody not that long ago, a couple of years ago, where I was going, I went and saw, she was a psychic, and she had the cards spread out and she just accessed them. We went straight into it. And then I talked to her afterwards and I said, I noticed that you didn't do any calling in or protection or anything like that. And she said, well, my guides are with me all the time. And, that goes without saying that I do that protection stuff, and I can access them. I can access them right now. If the poster comes to the door in the middle of a reading, everything just doesn't disappear. She said, I can just access them. And I was just like, oh, I needed to hear that for my own confirmation, because that's how I work. My guides are always here. There are some times where I won't tune into them if I'm, they're not busy and, they're polite guides, they're respectful guides, but I can access, whenever it's easy for me to do that. And I don't need to do a calling in of the light and, a prayer or a burning candles or anything, although sometimes that's really cool to do. But I can access them and I invite them in, and it's about how we work together. We've established that relationship, and it's about, only the light comes through for me. So it's about establishing those ground rules, I guess. So there's no getting back to that point. You do you, boo. But having said that, I have created I think it's a beautiful resource. I've co-created it with my guides, and it's called Whispers, Nudges and Goosebumps. And it's about a guide to your intuition, your guides, and all the invisible magic that you keep feeling and how to actually trust it. So what I've got there, it's not a course, it's not overwhelming, it's a downloadable guidebook for you. It's very, very soulful and very practical as well. And there are 11 ways to start tuning into your inner knowing. So even pulling cards, how to use cards to access your intuition, bit more detail about tracking signs and the synchronicities, how to make space for your guides and how to actually access your guides, a bit more on my journaling, and so much more. I've got some bonus resources in there as well about signs and symbols tracker. So being able to keep track of those amazing signs that you see. A simple and powerful 3-card spread for you. So you don't need to know tarot or, just using your guidance cards, how you can use those without using the guidebook or in those cards. And I've also got a grounding meditation that you can record in your own voice. So a really simple one there. And it's super cheap, 33 Australian dollars, and very much guided to 3.3. So significant. Whenever you look at my prices, you'll see that there's a very numerologically alignment with my pricing, so $33, and it's yours to use anytime, forever. So I'll have the link to that in the show notes. And I guess just to wrap up, we all have intuition. It's there. It's there. We just need to learn how to listen to it, I guess, remember it and listen to it. And you don't have to be a psychic. You don't have to meditate on top of a mountain for hours. You just need to trust yourself and really tune in. If there's one thing you take away from this, is it's about tuning in, because it's there. Your guides absolutely want to connect with you. And that nudge, that flutter, those goosebumps that you get, they're not just nothing. Don't dismiss them. They are there, and tune in to what they mean, what they're telling you. It's just about learning to listen in a new way. It really is about learning to listen in a new way. And if you would like, so the resource will be there in the show notes, Whispers, Nudges and Goosebumps. If you are interested in the Akashic Records, that's where I access and channel guidance for you through the Akashic Records. And I also do other intuitively guided sessions, plus the strategy sessions as well. It's beautiful because I get to combine the strategy. It's like soul meets strategy, which is very, very, very cool. So if you're interested, go to the Work With Me links in the show notes. And I would really love for you to share the podcast with others who might find this useful or beneficial. You just never know where it lands. I get lots of feedback and comments going, oh my God, Catherine, that thing you said was exactly what I needed to hear. So it really would mean a lot to get the podcast into, as I say, as many hearts and ears as we can. And also let me know how you go. I would love to hear how this unfolds for you, and stay tuned because I do have an exciting new opportunity that you might want to get involved with. So just stay tuned for that. I won't announce it yet, but it won't be that far away. Hugs, happiness, and keep being fabulous, gorgeous. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Happy Go Fabulous. I hope you loved it. If you did, could I ask a big favour? Please subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share the love and let your besties know about the podcast. This will help get it into the hearts and ears of all the gorgeous souls who need a little bit of fabulous in their life. If you'd like some more high vibe happiness in your life, come and visit me on my Happiness Hive socials and make sure you've signed up to my newsletter, your weekly drop of juicy goodness. Pop over to my Happiness Hive website and click on the link Working with Catherine. I'd love to help you make life amazing. Until next time, keep being fabulous.